Hello and welcome to PS Details Plus. My name is Martin Perhiniak, and today I'm going to show you all the possible options in Photoshop that you can use to make changes to your selections. Selections are very basic and you need them most of the time whenever you work in Photoshop, but there are so many little hidden features that can improve the way you work with selections. And in this video, I'm going to go through all of these. This is what I call the top 10 features for working with selections in Photoshop. So first of all, let's just go through quickly the basic features. This is going to be only 1 out of the 10, but it's a lot of options collected together. So first of all, how you create a selection. There are many tools, but they are all collected here in the toolbar. And you can find them under the marquee tools, rectangular, elliptical, single row and single color marquee tools. You have the lasso tools, 3 types of it. You have the quick selection and the magic wand tool. And then you have more options in the select menu. So this is the main area where you can find the selections, where you can start making selections. And let's just say you create a selection with the rectangular marquee tool. Once you created it, you can still move it around by clicking inside it and just dragging it around like that. And you can also make changes to it by adding, removing, or intersecting selections. The way you do it is with these tools, the marquee tools, is that you hold down Shift to add, you hold down Alt to remove, and Alt-Shift together to intersect a selection. And this works also with the lasso tools. Well, let me show you how it works. So we have already, let's just say, a selection. I'm just going closer, and we have a selection here of this part of the window. And if I hold down Shift, I can create another part here on the right. And if I hold down Shift again, I can create another part here. I'm going to select these two together, like that. And if I want to remove the one in the middle, the frame, I can hold down Alt and just notice that the cursor changes to minus. So now if I drag and deselect this part, like that, then we have again a good selection. Now what if I want to have only a small portion of this frame inside selected? I can hold down Alt-Shift together and the cursor changes to a little star, which means that it will be an intersect element. So if I let go, only the part of the previous selection inside this new selection will be still selected. And I think that was enough selections in one sentence. So you can see that's the way it works. Now let me zoom out a bit and show you that you can also move selections and even change their size while you are still drawing them. So if I have a frame or like a rectangular selection like this, which I want to use for the window on the right, or that shutter, I can hold down space while still having the mouse pressed down. So I can hold down space and move it in place like that. And when I let go space, I can continue drawing my selection. It's a very useful feature. So that's another thing what you can do while you're still drawing it. But once you let go the mouse, you can still move the selection by clicking on it and dragging it around like that. The other thing what you can do is inverting your selection. So if you have already something selected and you would like to select everything else apart from that, you can go to select and choose inverse, or you can press Command or Control Shift I. So that will select everything else apart from the frame. Now, if you want to deselect something, so make sure that nothing is selected, you can press Command or Control D, or once again go to the Select Deselect option. The same way you can select all, so everything is Command or Control A or select all. And what's interesting is the reselect option, which is Command or Control Shift D. So if I press that, then it will select the previously selected area. That's also quite useful. And then also, if you have a selection which you would like to save, let's just say this one here, the frame, I can also go to select and choose Save Selection. That's also an interesting feature, and it will be saved then as an alpha channel. So if I call this frame, or let's just call it shutter, then here in the channels I will be able to see it. So as I said, that's saved as an alpha channel, and whenever I need it, I can always go back to the select menu, choose load selection, and there I will be able to find my saved selection. So these are the basic changes that you can do. This is only one out of the 10 I'm going to show you today. The next one is how to transform your selection. Again, a very useful feature. Once again, I'm going to just select something here. Maybe I want to select this frame, the whole window frame. So I make a selection around it with the rectangular marquee tool. But it will be difficult to match it to the frame because the frame is a little bit on an angle. It's in perspective. So I have to match that perspective somehow. What I can do is go to the select menu and choose transform selection. Now, don't be confused. This is not free transform. It won't make changes to the image. It will only transform the selection itself. So if I select that, then I will get these control points, and what I can do is I can move them around. So first, let me just show you a bigger change. I can make it wider or rotate it like that, and when I press enter, I will still have my selection. So for example, a rectangular selection on an angle is almost impossible to do only if you do something like this, so using the transform selection feature. And if I go back to our previous example, and you select transform selection, then just like with free transform, we can even create perspective changes or transformation to the selection. So we can hold down command or control on PC and drag only a point of the 4 points of this rectangle and match it onto the corners of the frame. So even here at the bottom, I can hold down command or control on PC and drag them exactly where I need them to be. And then we have a perfect selection. I can press enter or return, and then we can see that the selection is just the way we want it. Now, another thing what you can do with the transform selection is warping. So you can have a selection, and you can even use these options, the warp modes, in which you can even bend the corners or edges of your selection. That can be also useful in some cases. So you can create nice curved shapes of your selections. And if I go back a bit, let me just go back once again to the transform options. I can even choose these preset warp settings. So I can set them to an arc, or I can set them to a flag, or whatever I need. So many ways to distort and transform your selection. But remember, this won't do anything with the image itself or the selected layer. It will only make changes to your selection. Another great way to be able to make changes to your selection is using the quick mask mode. Now, the quick mask mode is something that you can find here at the bottom of the toolbar, and with the keyboard shortcut, it's faster to access. It's pressing Q. Whenever you have a selection, the quick mask will show you a different view of your selection. The default settings is that you have a red overlay on the area which is deselected, and you can see the selected area in its original colors. So here it's easy to see that the window frame is selected and everything else is outside of the selection. If I want to change how the quick mask view shows the selected areas, I can double click on the icon in the toolbar, the quick mask icon, and then I can see what should be indicated by the color, the masked areas or the selected areas. So masked areas are the areas outside of the selection. You can decide which one you want to indicate, and you can also decide what color you would like to use and what opacity. So you can even have a full 100% overlay with the color over the areas that's outside or inside the selection. But I just wanted to point out this. So if you click on the color, you can also change the color. I'm going to leave it as it is, the default settings. And I'm going to show you when it is useful to have the quick mask mode. For example, if you want to make a selection, let's just say I'm going to press Q now, and I make a quick selection here of this frame. I can use also the quick selection tool, so you don't have to always use the frame tool. So I made a selection with this tool, the quick selection tool, and I use the same feature. Holding down Alt, I can remove the areas which I don't need to include in the selection. I can even draw over this little handle here. But doing this with the quick selection tool, which is like a brush, is not always the best. You can see that it doesn't do the perfect job. So instead of using that, I just go back a bit, and I'm going to switch to quick mask mode by pressing Q. And instead of using the quick selection tool, while I'm in the quick mask mode, I can use the brush tool. So I select the brush tool, I make my brush size smaller and also hard on the edges. You can do this quickly by holding down Command, and you can do this quickly by holding down Control and Alt, and then click or right click on PC, and then you can drag it left and right to change the size, up and down to change the hardness of your brush. So I had set it up like this, and if I draw with white, that means I would like to show more of my selection. And if I press X to switch to black, or set the color to black, then I can draw with black, which means I will remove from the selection. So for example, here I can draw over the handle, and you can see how much easier it is to draw, especially if we have a pressure sensitive tablet, which I just turned on. So I'm going to use the pressure sensitivity of the tablet to change the size of the brush. In these cases, I can be much faster, and by just switching between black and white colors, I can very quickly customize my selection to what I need. So you can see we have a really nice selection, and we can already use this for an adjustment. But what you can also do in the quick mask mode is that you can use the gradient tool. So we can select the gradient tool, and if that is set to linear and from black and white, we can add a gradient on the image, and then whatever adjustment we will do will only affect the selected part of the image. So for example, we can set this up. I just press Q and use it for a black and white adjustment. I click on black and white, and you can see that the top of the image will be black and white, while the bottom will be in colors. And we can use the move tool and move this up and down, and then you can see how it changes. So quick mask mode can be used to create gradient selections, or using the brush you can create very precise changes to your selections. After these longer explanations, I will go a little bit faster because the following changes are easier to understand and to use. Whenever you have a selection, and let me just make a selection of one of these flowers. Again, I'm going to use the quick selection tool like that. And maybe I'm going to use a selection of this flower as well, and just hold down Alt to get rid of the parts between them. So I have these two flowers selected, and then if I want to make selections of the other flowers, I can use the select menu and choose similar. That's a very useful feature. It will try to select all similar colors from the image. And if I want to extend these selections, because they didn't select everything from the flowers, I can also use grow. So select grow, and then the selections which I already have will start growing. So it will, some more colors will be added to them. This is useful, but what you can also use, which is quite similar to this, is by using the magic wand tool instead of the quick selection tool, and turn off contiguous. If that is turned off, then when you click on a color on the image, it will already select all similar colors around the whole image. So if I keep adding to this selection by holding down Shift and maybe increasing the tolerance a bit, I can make more selection of the flowers, and by only doing this on 2 flowers, I almost have all the other little flowers selected in the image. So I just need to go a little bit over some of them, and then everything else in the image will start to be selected. So you can see these flowers are almost all selected by just using the magic wand tool and having the contiguous option turned off. So let's just to make sure you understand how it works, I'm going to deselect these, Command D or Control D, and click on this frame here on the right. Because contiguous is turned off, both frames will be selected. While if I turn contiguous on and I click on this one on the right, the left one won't be selected because there's an area between the two shutters or frames which is not blue, and there it has to stop. So when contiguous is turned off, the magic wand can leap onto the other areas and make selections there as well without having connection between these two areas. So that was the magic wand and the grow and similar options together. The next one which I'm going to show you is the feather. So whenever you make a selection, let me just use the rectangular marquee tool again. You have a feather option which you can control before you actually use the feature. So you can increase that. I usually increase it by clicking on the word and drag it up and down, which by the way you can use almost anywhere in Photoshop. It's a much faster way to make changes to your values. So I set it up to something like that, and whenever I make a selection and press Q to enter the quick mask mode, you can already see that there is a little feather, softer edge on the selection. So if I increase the feather even more, then we can see it even better. If I press Q, you can see a nice soft edge on the selection. Now what happens if you decide to add the feather later on? So you make a selection first with 0 feather, but then you decide to add the feather. So it can be used with a rectangular marquee tool or even with the quick selection tool. Let me just use a quick selection tool, make a selection of this. And let's just say I would like to have a nice feathered selection on this. I can either go to the select menu and choose modify feather, and here I can set the feather radius. So I can type in, let's say 20 pixels, and then press Q and we can see it's a softer selection. Or what we can also do is use refine edge. Now refine edge is a much more complex option. Here we have several features, but one of them is feather. So if I increase feather, here we will have a live preview of adding or removing the feather. That's quite useful, and you can also change the view, how you want to see your selection. So you can even see it on a black background and see what feather does to it. You can also use smooth, which will smoothen out the selection. Again, a very useful feature. And this is again something we can use outside of the refine edge dialog box. We can use contrast, which will make your selection more higher in contrast. And you can also shift the edge slightly, so add a little bit more on the edges or remove from the edges. And you can even decontaminate colors here in this dialog box. Plus you have the smart radius feature, which will try to make a better selection. And I don't want to go into more details of this because the refine edge dialog box is something I already discussed in other tutorials, and it's a little bit more complex to go through everything, but it's just good to know that feathering is something you can do here as well, and refine edge is probably the most complex change that you can do to your selections. So I'm going to click on cancel out from this, and I just would like to show you that I mentioned smooth from the refine edge, which you can find from the select menu, modify smooth, and you can also find a feather here. But apart from these, you have also expand and contract, which is similar to the shift edge from the refine edge dialog box, but these ones are a bit easier to use, and they are not restricted because the shift edge will only change a couple of pixels, probably around 5 pixels minus and plus. But here you can actually say you would like to add 30 pixels around your selection, and then it will increase all the edges of your selections by 30 pixels. And you can use the same with contract to remove a specific amount of pixels from the edges. But what is also interesting is the border option, which will create a border. Again, you can set the width of that border. It's like a circle or a frame around your original selection. So it will remove the inside of your selection and only keep the edges with the width that you specify. So if I press Q, you can see that now only these parts are selected. It's quite interesting feature as well, and in some cases it can be used very well. Another very useful feature is the color range, which you can find under the select menu, and this can start a selection but also make changes to a selection. So the reason I'm mentioning it in this tutorial is because if you have a selection, let's just say, of this area of the image, So I made a quick selection of that, and then I go to select color range. I can specify which parts of this selection I will need. So I can click on the parts of the image. I can hold down Shift and then make selections of the colors I would like to include. And this is another panel similar to Refine Edge, where you can customize a lot of things. You can increase and decrease fuzziness, which is basically like the tolerance. You can also change how you would like to see the dialog box preview and the image preview. These are the settings I prefer to use. And then if I click on OK, you can see that from the selection, which was originally just a simple rectangular selection, now we have a much more precise selection of the parts which I need, which is the window frame. So let me just show you another quick example. If I, for example, want to have all these flowers selected, I can use select color range, and I can click on one of the colors, and then shift clicking on it will increase the selection and include more colors from the flowers. And the reason why it's good to always make a selection first and then use color range is because that will filter out all unnecessary parts from the image. So in this case, if I would like to do this selection, I would probably use the lasso tool, make a quick selection around the flowers, so that just this area where the flowers appear, and then go to select color range. And then now I will have a much easier time making this selection, because I can just simply click on the flowers. I can even click here in the preview area and use shift clicking on it to increase the selection and include more of the flowers. So that's the way you can use color range, a bit similar to Refine Edge. It can modify and make it more precise, all your selections. And that's all what I wanted to show you today. So remember, we had the basic features: add, remove, intersect, select all, deselect, reselect, invert selection, load and save selections, or move selections. These are all the basic features. Then we have the select, transform selection. Then we had quick mask, grow, similar, feather, contract, expand, smooth, border, and refine edge. So you can see there are many ways of making changes to your selections. And by the way, usually whenever you make a selection, you should use it together with an adjustment layer, or use it as a mask, or save it as a mask. So that's the best way to make it non-destructive whenever you work with selections. That's all I wanted to show you today. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and I hope you learned some new features. Thanks a lot for your attention, and I hope you will join me next time.